The man had been dead for over 5,000 years when scientists finally opened his stomach. In 1991, hikers found him melting out of a glacier in the Ötztal Alps. Skin, bone, tools, and clothing preserved almost perfectly by ice. Researchers named him Ötzi. But it was 2018 before anyone thought to look inside him properly, and what they found rewrote what we thought we knew about how early humans actually ate. His last meal wasn't some primitive scrap of survival food. It was a carefully balanced feast. Fatty wild goat meat, red deer, einkorn wheat, and traces of a toxic fern that may have been medicine rather than food. A man walking toward his death in the mountains had still made sure to eat well, and that single frozen meal opens a much bigger question. What did the food that built the human body and brain actually look like? And out of everything nature offered, why did our ancestors keep returning to the same 10 foods, ingredients, and technologies again and again for 2 million years? By the end of this story, you'll know exactly what those 10 were, why your body still quietly craves them, and why they're sitting in your kitchen right now, disguised as something ordinary. Start with the problem those 10 things had to solve. The human brain, over roughly 2 million years, nearly tripled in size, an organ so metabolically expensive that today it burns around 20% of your entire resting energy, despite being only about 2% of your body weight. That kind of growth doesn't happen on scarcity. It happens on a very specific, very reliable fuel supply. And the first item on that list is the one everyone already assumes. Food number 1 was meat, but at sites in East Africa dating back nearly 2 million years, archaeologists found something stranger. Cut marks and deliberately smashed long bones, evidence that early humans weren't just hunting animals, they were racing hyenas and vultures for the one part of the carcass predators leave behind. Marrow is exceptionally rich in fat, and that concentrated energy would have been enormously valuable to a growing brain. So food number 2, and arguably the more important of the two, probably wasn't a fresh kill at all. It was the leftovers. That single reversal should make you suspicious of every assumption that follows, because the next food is even less expected. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, will risk furious stings and climb terrifying heights for it, and rock art across southern Africa and Spain, some over 8,000 years old, shows humans doing exactly the same. Wild honey is one of the densest natural sources of pure, fast-burning sugar on Earth. Researchers studying the Hadza, a modern hunter-gatherer community in Tanzania, have found that honey can make up as much as 15% of their caloric intake at certain times of year. Food 3. Honey, and it may explain something oddly familiar, why the taste of sweetness still triggers such an immediate, involuntary pull in you today. But none of these foods could do their job without a technology so old it barely feels like technology at all. Number 4 isn't a food at all, it's fire. The earliest solid evidence of controlled cooking comes from a site in Israel called Gesher Beno Yaakov, where burned seeds and wood dated to around 780,000 years ago suggest hominins were using fire with intention long before modern humans existed. Cooking breaks down tough plant fibers and unfolds proteins, making calories dramatically easier to extract. Some researchers argue this single shift may have freed up enough energy to help fund the brain's growth in the first place. Roots and tubers that were tough and difficult to digest raw became dramatically more useful once humans learned to cook them. The real turning point in human evolution may not have been a new food. It may have been a new way of unlocking the food already there. Here's where the story gets personal, because grain, food 5, is the one Ötzi himself carried. Wild einkorn and emmer wheat grew across the ancient Near East long before anyone farmed them, and archaeological sites show people gathering and grinding these wild grasses more than 20,000 years before agriculture officially began. Farming didn't invent bread. It just made something humans already loved easier to get. Food 6 is one you'd never think to hunt for, because you can't see it, smell it, or chase it down. Imagine walking for hundreds of miles across an empty landscape in search of something invisible, something you couldn't eat for pleasure but couldn't live without. Salt isn't just a seasoning, it's a physiological requirement, and inland communities without regular access to it faced real limits on health and survival. That scarcity is part of why ancient salt routes crisscrossed entire continents, and why in some societies salt was worth its weight in value. Then the story turns toward water. At Pinnacle Point in South Africa, archaeologists found evidence of humans harvesting shellfish more than 100,000 years ago. Food 7. pulled from tide pools rather than hunted on land. Shellfish are uniquely rich in the fatty acids. Modern neuroscience now links directly to brain development, which means one of the true cradles of human evolution may literally have been a coastline. Now comes the strangest twist of all, because food ate almost didn't exist for most of human history. Milk seems obvious today, but genetic studies show that the mutation allowing adults to comfortably digest it, lactase persistence, only became common in parts of Europe within roughly the last 7,000 to 10,000 years, spreading alongside the rise of cattle herding. Before that mutation appeared, dairy was something only infants could safely consume. An entire category of nutrition opened up for whole populations not because of a new food, but because of a random genetic accident that happened to arrive at exactly the right cultural moment. Food 9 tends to embarrass people, and it shouldn't. There's a popular myth that insects were only ever a desperate famine food, something eaten purely out of necessity when nothing else was available. The archaeological and ethnographic record says otherwise. Insects appear as a stable, deliberately sought part of the diet across a wide range of documented hunter-gatherer societies, prized specifically for their fat and protein, not merely tolerated in hard times. The myth of the desperate bug-eater says more about modern squeamishness than about ancient priorities, which leaves the 10th item, and it's the quiet one, easy to overlook precisely because it required no hunting, no fire, no tools at all. Nuts, dense in fat, naturally sealed in a shell that kept them edible for months. They were some of the only foods early humans could reliably store against a bad season. No drama, no reversal, just patience rewarded, which may be exactly why you still reach for a handful of them without thinking. 10 things, gathered across nearly 2 million years on 3 different continents by people who never met each other and never wrote anything down. And yet what connects them isn't chance. Every single one is expensive to find in the wild. Fat, sugar, salt, protein, and every single one is, not coincidentally, among the flavors humans still crave most intensely today. Agriculture changed what we grow. Refrigeration changed how long food lasts. Supermarkets changed how far we have to walk to get it. But none of that reached far enough to change what your brain is actually looking for on your plate tonight. It still recognizes fat, sugar, salt, and protein with the urgency of an animal that has no idea when its next meal is coming, because for most of its history, it genuinely didn't. Which brings the story back to that man in the ice. Ötzi didn't eat einkorn wheat and fatty goat meat because he understood evolutionary biology. He ate them because, across an almost unimaginable span of time, his ancestors' bodies had already worked out precisely what kept a human being alive and thinking clearly in a harsh world, and passed that knowledge down not as a recipe, but as a craving. That craving is still sitting inside you right now, inherited whole, untouched by 10,000 years of convenience. The tools, the landscapes, and the dangers have all changed almost beyond recognition. The hunger underneath them, remarkably, has barely changed at all.